daily news program from Worldlink TV presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome to the news of the hour from Abu Dhabi TV. Palestinian Prime Minister Mahmoud Abbas held talks with the Islamic resistance movement Hamas in Gaza. This is his first official meeting with them in his 3 weeks as Prime Minister. Israel's foreign minister says that the U.S. president may hold a high-level meeting with Sharon and Abu Mazen. Meanwhile, the Palestinian president Yasser Arafat says that he insists on implementing the roadmap. Kofi Annan announced that he will appoint a special representative to Iraq as soon as possible. And the Security Council passed the resolution to lift the sanctions against Iraq, passed by a 14-0 vote, while Syria was absent from voting. 2 Iraqi civilians were killed in Fallujah after 4 explosions shook the U.S. command center at the entrance of the city. Meanwhile, the U.S. forces responded by randomly opening fire. 770 people have been killed and about 5,000 people have been wounded following a violent earthquake that shook the city of Algiers and its surrounding areas. It is expected that the numbers may increase since there are people still buried under the rubble. From Algeria, our correspondent Mohammed Dahoud.
A major catastrophe has hit the Algerians, who are still suffering from economic and social hardships. Hundreds have been killed, and there are thousands of victims. This earthquake revealed many of the social problems facing the Algerian individual. However, since the 1990s and up till now, the Algerian government has been trying to improve the economy.
This is the end of the news in brief. A violent earthquake shook the city of Algiers and its surrounding areas, killing 770 people and wounding about 5,000 others. However, the numbers may increase. Furthermore, the freeway heading east between Algiers and Tizi Ouzou was seriously damaged. The Algerian government formed a crisis management committee to organize the rescue work, and the Algerian president declared 3 days of mourning in the country.
The aftershocks of the earthquake in Boumerdès, the city of Algiers, and its surrounding areas left its impression on the faces of the Algerians, who took to the streets for shelter, denouncing the belated rescue missions to the inflicted neighborhoods of the capital.
Listen, we are sleeping on the streets. I've lived in the same home for 20 years, and we went through many shakes before, especially since they dug a tunnel for the metro under us, weakening the foundation of the building.
The earthquake measured 5.8 on the Richter scale, killing hundreds of people and wounding thousands of others, adding that tens of old buildings collapsed despite the residents' numerous complaints regarding the safety of these buildings.
Since most of the buildings were damaged, we spent the night at the bus station. The government did not do anything for us. They should be responsible and come and help us. We have complained, but they didn't do anything. In fact, the authorities are negligent, especially in the district of Bilkour. It is an old and poor neighborhood housing old colonial buildings.
A crisis management committee was formed to organize relief work, which is led by the new head of government, who begins his term with this catastrophic earthquake. Nonetheless, Arab and foreign countries are sympathizing with Algeria during its time of crisis. The Algerian head of government described this earthquake as a major catastrophe. However, the victims of the earthquake and now homeless citizens are discontent with the Algerian authorities' late response and negligence of this catastrophe that is still claiming the lives of people buried under the rubble. Mohammed Dahoud, Abu Dhabi TV, and the inflicted areas east of Algiers.
The World Health Organization expressed their growing concern about the type of water the Iraqis are drinking. In Baghdad, there is no water treatment equipment, contributing to the spread of germs.
The children playing in the streets of Baghdad are at dangerous risk of getting sick. They say that water is the source of our life. But to these children, water has become the reason for an increased cholera, typhoid, and diarrhea. The city's sewage has become mixed with rivers and reservoirs. Abu Amin drained 4 sewage pipes when he felt the risk of contamination would affect his family members. He quickly moved to set up a drain system at 1 sewage pipe in his backyard.
The children are becoming sick. The water isn't sterilized, and the sewage is overflowing. And it smells. It's all contaminated. The water is contaminated.
The days become longer in the summertime, thus the chance of the spread of disease is greater, especially in the devastated and poor areas that have spread throughout Baghdad. The World Health Organization in Iraq has begun to say that the situation has turned dangerous.
There's cholera, there's typhoid. But currently, the most dangerous illness is diarrhea.
The water treatment equipment at various facilities has either been stolen or damaged. In addition, electricity is cut off for a long period of time, preventing the repair of damage or at least the basic operation of the sewage system.
It is the responsibility of the occupation forces to return life to normal. It is the responsibility according to the Geneva Convention.
The signs indicate that the situation of cholera, typhoid, and malaria in Iraq after the war affects 10,000 people.
The 13-year-old sanctions on Iraq are over. The UN Security Council voted overwhelmingly to lift the embargo system. Balthazar Dubati has the story.
The draft resolution received 14 votes in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
With a unanimous vote, the UN Security Council ended 13 years of sanctions on Iraq, but gave the United States and Britain broad powers to run Iraq and sell its oil. All the Council members, including anti-war powers, France, Germany, Russia, and China, voted in favor of the US-sponsored draft. Syria did not participate in the voting, saying it was not given enough time to study the draft before the vote. The political victory for the US and Britain, which earlier failed to win the Council's support to invade Iraq, was not, however, an easy ride. The US had to revise the language of the draft before the third version met the approval of the Security Council members, Russia in particular. Moscow had strong reservations over the draft, saying the US and British allegations that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction should be verified first before ending the embargo. The Bush administration made some last-minute concessions that opened the door to independent verification of the existence of the weapons, even in a limited UN role, and the possibility of UN arms inspectors returning to post-war Iraq. US and British troops have so far failed to find the banned weapons they invaded Iraq to allegedly prevent it from using them. The final compromise in the 7-page resolution was an agreement by Washington for a Security Council review within 12 months of the implementation of the resolution. But the measure does not need to be renewed and stays in effect until an internationally recognized Iraqi government is established. The US and Britain welcomed the vote that would give them the upper hand in running Iraq.
The whole United Nations system will hope that the vote which we have just taken marks a return to sustained consensus on one of the most difficult foreign policy issues we have faced.
Germany and Russia called the vote a compromise.
This resolution is a compromise reached after intensive and sometimes difficult negotiations. By definition, is that it does not fulfill every wish of all parties, But as compared to the initial draft of the co-sponsors, we have achieved substantial improvements. The resolution provides a framework in which the United Nations has been strengthened and can take a central role in the political and economic process.
Ahead of the voting, French Foreign Minister Dominique de Villepin hailed the return to the United Nations after its legitimacy was gravely undermined by Washington and London's decision to go to war without a UN resolution.
The coalition countries have decided to come back to the United Nations and to take into account many of our requests. In other words, the United Nations is back in the game. We are convinced that the United Nations will be tomorrow at the core of any international action, thanks to its legitimacy, experience, and capabilities.
The vote is also seen as an opportunity for powers to heal a rift that emerged because of the war. With this in mind, U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell arrived in Paris that won the wrath of the U.S. administration and media for opposing the war, but still played a behind-the-scenes role in softening Russian opposition to the new resolution. Diplomats see the significance of the unanimous vote as a move towards involving the world in what happens in Iraq after Washington and London sidelined the international community with a unilateral war.
The situation in Iraq remains tense with ongoing anti-US attacks and lawlessness. In the city of Fallujah, Iraqi gunmen fired anti-tank rockets on US occupation forces. Witnesses said a US tank was on fire after 4 explosions shook the area overnight. US tanks then opened fire randomly at the center of the city, located some 50 kilometers northwest of Baghdad, killing 2 Iraqi civilians in a small truck. Witnesses added the troops prevented an ambulance from approaching the victims. One of the dead is 19-year-old Hadi Jaber. US soldiers also started to break in houses in a search for the attackers. A US soldier whose patrol came under attack said several Iraqis were killed in the overnight firefight. He said the patrol had come under fire from at least 9 attackers with rocket-propelled grenades in an industrial area on the outskirts of the city. The latest killings will increase the tension in Fallujah, where US troops killed over 15 demonstrators last month. Angry residents said, "Is this the way the Americans liberate our country?" US Central Command Chief General Tommy Franks ordered an estimated 200,000 followers of Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party to turn themselves in immediately to US-led troops. The US radio said the order applied to all full members of the party, and a sharp broadening of the scope of a new tougher policy unveiled by the new head of the occupation administration, Paul Bremer, last week. Bremer barred the top 4 ranks of the Ba'ath Party, some 35,000 people from government jobs, reversing the policy of his predecessor, Jay Garner, of working with some senior Ba'athists to get the country back on its feet. In the occupied Palestinian territories, security sources said Israeli occupation troops seriously injured the 12-year-old Palestinian Kamal Nawahidi in the Amun village near Jenin. And on Wednesday, Israeli occupation troops killed 3 Palestinian civilians near Ramallah and Tulkarm, while they seriously wounded a youth in Bethlehem. Israeli troops also arrested a Canadian citizen from the Peace Christian group in Al Khalil and demolished the houses of Mahdiy's Jamal Abayat and Tariq Khalife and 2 other houses in Nablus, claiming that explosives used to be hidden in one of the 2 houses. The U.S. ambassador in Israel, Dan Kurtzer, prodded Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's government Thursday over the issue of settlement outposts in the West Bank, reiterating the U.S. view that they should be dismantled. Israeli public radio quoted Kurtzer as saying, "It is in Israel's interest to abide by the law, therefore the expectation would be that those outposts would be dismantled." It was expected when the so-called roadmap for peace was published 3 weeks ago that Israel would at least dismantle settlement outposts, if not accept the document officially. But Ariel Sharon did not budge and even made a string of defiant statements on the issue. U.S. authorities have stepped up security measures around the country following the decision by the Homeland Security Department to raise the domestic terror alert level to orange, its second highest. This came as the United States on Wednesday protested against the Qatar-based Al Jazeera channel for airing an audio tape for Osama bin Laden's top lieutenant Ayman al-Zawahiri.
The so-called U.S. Federal Counterterrorism Authorities called for increased security nationwide by raising the security alert to high, but provided few specifics on where Al-Qaeda could strike inside the country. This came as the Qatar-based Al Jazeera channel on Wednesday aired what it said was an audio tape on which Ayman al-Zawahiri, top lieutenant of Al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden, addressed Al-Qaeda's followers, apparently urging them to strike various targets in various nations. Al-Zawahiri remarks seem to have been made during the U.S.-led war against Iraq.
The Crusaders and the Jews understand only the language of killing and blood, and they are convinced only if you destroy their interests, burn their towers, and force their economies to collapse. So you Muslims, you should come together and attack the embassies of the United States, England, Australia, and Norway, and their interests and companies and their personnel. Burn the land under their feet. Take an example and follow in the footsteps of your 19 brothers who attacked America with their airplanes in New York and Washington and inflicted unprecedented destruction from which the U.S. is still suffering. People of Iraq, we defeated those Zionists many times before, and we forced them out of our land and holy places. And you should know that you are not on your own in this battle. Your Mujahideen brothers are chasing your enemies and waiting for the right time to attack them. The Mujahideen in Palestine, Afghanistan, and Chechnya, and even in the hearts of America and the West, they are making the enemies taste all sorts of death, and the coming days will bring some good news that will satisfy your heart.
FBI Director Robert Mueller, however, said that there was nothing specific as to potential targets or times of attacks, and contradicted himself when he said that detaining major leaders in the network increased the U.S. Security Department's knowledge of predicting Osama's moves, adding that he believes that bin Laden is still out there.
I think there's some concern about what kind of control he has over the people. One of the things that's happened in the last 20 months since September 11th is we've removed the Al-Qaeda from its sanctuary. We have taken off a number of its major leaders, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, bin al-Shib, and that has increased our capabilities of knowing what Al-Qaeda is doing, and it has dispersed Al-Qaeda and made it much more difficult for the leaders, including bin Laden, to control what has happened.
On the contrary, many analysts see in the large-scale security measures taken in the U.S. nothing but an additional burden on American taxpayers and a failure to eliminate Al-Qaeda, or at least to curb its activities following the invasion of Afghanistan for that purpose. Meanwhile, Saudi officials said that 3 Al-Qaeda suspects from a Moroccan origin arrested in the kingdom this week planned to hijack a plane from Jeddah in what appeared to be a plan for a new attack. Saudi analysts say that 3 were part of a larger cell that was in the process of carrying out attacks against landmarks in the kingdom.
A bomb exploded in an empty classroom at the Yale University Law School in the northeastern U.S. state of Connecticut on Wednesday, sending debris flying and students scrambling for safety. No injuries were reported, and there were no initial indications that an international organization set off the bomb. The incident came as the nation was on elevated alert for possible attacks, and several hours after U.S. President George W. Bush, a Yale alumnus and whose daughter is an undergraduate at the university, visited the state to speak at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy graduation ceremony in New London.
In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, hello and welcome to JNN English News, coming to you live from Tehran. Iranian President Mohammad Khatami on Thursday tasked the country's management and planning organization and the governorate of southwestern province of Khuzestan to jointly prepare and submit to the government a comprehensive plan on development of the provincial cities of Khorramshahr and Abadan within 2 months. Addressing the organizers of a seminar to mark the anniversary of liberation of the southwestern city of Khorramshahr during the Iraqi-imposed war some 20 years ago, President Khatami commemorated the event as a miraculous epic which came true as a result of Iranian soldiers' reliance in the Almighty God, their firm resolve and attachment to their homeland. The Iranian chief executive then called for prioritizing and speeding up implementation of development projects for rendering better services to the noble residents of Khuzestan province. Iranian Intelligence Minister Ali Younesi calls on the United States to hand over to Iran the terrorists in charge of the 1994 bomb blast in the holy shrine of Imam Reza in northeastern Iranian city of Mashhad. Mr. Younesi on Thursday said Iran is completely aware that the mastermind of the terrorist incident at Imam Reza's holy shrine is in the hands of Americans. However, as the Iranian official added, U.S. officials have refused to extradite that person. Rejecting Washington's allegations concerning the presence of some Al-Qaeda members in Iran, the Iranian intelligence minister said Americans accuse Iran of supporting the terrorist groups with which Iran has had problems since many years ago. The Iranian intelligence minister went on to say despite its claims, the United States is supporting the terrorist grouplet of MKO, which had previously been called as terrorist by Washington as well, and as such support serves as an explicit proof for the U.S. backing terrorism. In a session dubbed Drug Smuggling Routes from Central Asia to Europe, Iranian Foreign Minister Kamal Kharrazi in Paris on Thursday reiterated Iran's firm determination in its campaign against narcotics, as well as its decisiveness in cementing anti-narcotics campaign cooperation with the international community. 55 representatives from Southwest Asia, Central Asia, Caucasus, the Balkans, Europe, states membering G8, besides envoys from several international organizations, attended the session where the Iranian Foreign Minister in his speech termed illicit drug smuggling as a global dilemma and invited on all countries to employ their facilities and launch a comprehensive global anti-drug campaign. Pinpointing the link among issues like illicit drug smuggling, terrorist acts, and arms trafficking, the Iranian officials cited poor economic conditions plus lack of necessary infrastructures in Afghanistan among major reasons behind the continuation of poppy plantation and smuggling of narcotics in that country. Head of Iranian Police Force's anti-narcotics campaign headquarters says that free puppet cultivation in 23 provinces in Afghanistan is predicted to rise that country's narcotics production to 3,500 tons this year. Brigadier General Mehdi Aboui also warned that higher narcotics production in Afghanistan means more invasion of armed drug traffickers of Iran's eastern borders. The Iranian police official then criticized the Afghan government for taking no measures to combat narcotics production. He added Iran's police will thereby double its campaign against drug smuggling bans and declare that over 9 tons of narcotics have been seized in the country's southeastern province of Sistan-Balochistan during the past 2 months.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation,